Hello, everybody. This is Skip Elsheimer. Welcome to the AV Geeks lunchtime streaming show where we watch old 16mm films, and that was a whole bunch of clips from various Coronet films. When we scan the film, we clip it up, and then we have people we call shot listers who go through and describe the clips with a couple of sentences or phrases and then put in keywords, and then that is something that we upload to services like Shutterstock and Pond 5, and in the hopes that we can make stock footage sales. Doesn't always happen. There's far more clips online than ones that have sold. Like, I would say we have probably 220,000 clips online, but we've only sold like 22,000. And what's interesting is a lot of the clips sell over and over and over again, so it's obvious that they're visually compelling for whatever reason. So, speaking of visually compelling, I think marionettes are visually compelling. What about you?
Progress comes slowly to the land in little changes like those you can see in this old street. Telephone wires, electric lamps. The coffee house that once cast its shadow only on donkeys and carts now echoes the motor of a passing car. The public well in the square never runs dry anymore as water bubbles through a pipe from a distant reservoir.
Big joke. I'd like to see you try to drink from that fountain.
Why didn't you wait a minute, Hamid? No doubt a lot of water was being used elsewhere on the line.
The whole system is no good. What can we expect of something built with American aid?
That's unfair, Hamid. That is unfair. We do have running water now, where we had dry wells or floods before.
As far as I'm concerned, if the Americans don't come through with more funds to improve what they've done so far, we should turn elsewhere for help.
Just like that.
Just like that. There are other big nations ready to extend credit to us, you know.
I know. And if we ever got involved with those foreign powers you refer to, we'd end up with an innkeeper's bill. A what, Effendi? I was remembering one of the old stories about Nasruddin Hoxha, a wise man who lived in this land 500 years ago. The story is called The Innkeeper's Bill. It teaches that you should never get in debt to anyone whose main purpose is to take advantage of you. A merchant traveling through the country to sell his wares in a distant place stopped at a roadside inn not far from the Hoxha's village. The innkeeper made the merchant welcome and served him for supper 1 roast fowl, 2 boiled eggs, and half a loaf of bread. And hay for his donkey. The next morning, even though the merchant did not know the innkeeper well, He asked if he could settle accounts on his return trip through the district. And the innkeeper agreed. The trip was long and hard for the merchant. 1 month passed, then another. And finally, after 3 months, on his way home, the merchant returned to that same inn near the Hocha's village. The innkeeper served him as before. Next morning, as he was leaving, the merchant took out his money bag and called for his bill. The innkeeper smiled. "I'm afraid it's a big bill, but so long as you're not fussy about money, we can easily come to terms. Allowing 100 piastres discount, I think you owe me about 200. 200 piastres? 200? The merchant's first shock at the high total turned to anger as the innkeeper explained his bill.
Let us suppose that the chicken you ate 3 months ago and didn't pay for had laid an egg every day. That would make 90 eggs.
Oh.
If they had been left to hatch, there would have been as many chickens. And these, of course, would have grown up and laid many eggs. I should have had a large poultry yard by now, all from your fowl and eggs. And you can easily figure the hundreds of piastres I would have made from them. Now you complain, even after I allow you a big discount on the cost of all that, and even throw in the food you had last night. You ought to be glad I'm only asking 200 piastres for my loss."
The innkeeper's claim was disputed by the merchant, and the case came to court. Before the hearing, the innkeeper had sent a fine, fat goose to the Cadi, and so his charges against the merchant were listened to with favor. The merchant was found responsible for a great loss by the innkeeper and ordered to bring 200 piastres on the following day. One of the people in the village who heard the merchant's loud wails of unhappiness was Nasiruddin Hocha. The Hocha listened carefully and then promised to help. He told the merchant to ask for a 3-day stay of judgment. 3 days later, the merchant, with his precious money bag, faced the Cadi and the innkeeper. But in spite of his promise to help, the Hocha was nowhere to be seen. Finally, the Cadi sent someone to fetch Nasiruddin. And an hour later, the Hocha stood in court.
"Cadi, I was just coming here when my partner at the farm came in. He was going to sow the field with ordinary wheat. But I stopped him and went to the cereal bins where we keep our boiled wheat. That's just as good, I told him, and gave him sacks of it to sow in all our field."
The Cadi's voice was filled with scorn for the Hocha.
"Gentlemen, you have heard him. This man actually sows his field with cooked wheat. Is it possible for the court to listen to such nonsense?" "Just as possible," answered the Hocha, "as it is to raise a large yard of poultry from a roast fowl and some boiled eggs, for which you have condemned this worthy merchant to pay 200 piastres.
And the judgment against the merchant was laughed out of court. When the laughter died away in that courtroom long ago, the merchant was left with a lesson that the Hocha had made quite clear. Be careful to whom you get in debt. And that lesson applies just as well today, even to international affairs. Sometimes it is very convenient to have credit or funds extended to us. It helps bring progress. But at those times, we should be very careful that the country to whom we become indebted is interested in helping us, and not mainly in seeing that we become part of its empire, or in handing us an innkeeper's bill.
I feel like this is the first time that Hamid has specifically criticized American foreign aid in these Hoxha films. Like, it's all been very subtle in what they've been talking to. And of course, him saying that, well, if the Americans don't step up, there's other people that are willing to pay. And of course, that's the Soviets. And that's the whole crux of this entire series is this is a marionette presentation that is propaganda and is specifically trying to keep, I think this is Iran, from going with communist leaders, so that we could hold on to whatever oil rights we had and whatever interests the United States had. So that was from the National Archives. And I have a couple, one or two things from the National Archives. I've been working on getting their materials up at archive.org, just in case for some reason the National Archives website is compromised in some way. We have a backup. And so here is something about your FBI. And I should say that this has the version of the file that I downloaded was very low resolution, and I tried to tweak it a little bit and up-res it, so it might be a little strange looking. But the information is interesting nonetheless. So here it is, your FBI.
I'm Clarence Kelly, Director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. I want to welcome you to FBI headquarters and thank you for your interest in law enforcement. J. Edgar Hoover once said that the quality of law enforcement in a community or in a nation reflects the involvement of its citizens. Your presence here today proves that, like the thousands of others who tour our headquarters, you share in that involvement. The men and the women of the FBI, whether in the headquarters or in field offices throughout the country, join me in the hope that you will find your tour interesting and informative, that it will give you an inside view of some of the challenges we have met in the past, some we must meet today, and what we are doing to meet those of the future.
The time is 1924. A young Washington lawyer in the Department of Justice is named director of the scandal-ridden Bureau of Investigation. His name, John Edgar Hoover. That is when the scandal stopped. The new director met the first of many challenges, and won. A few years later, when the name of the organization was changed to the Federal Bureau of Investigation, its reputation, like its seal, stood for fidelity, bravery, and most of all, integrity. It still does. The 1930s were a challenging time for law enforcement. Gang wars spawned during Prohibition continued with bloody shootouts like this reenactment of the Kansas City Massacre. The FBI met the challenge of the gangs head-on. These newsreels of 1932 report an American tragedy, the kidnapping and murder of the Lindbergh baby. The Bureau, under Hoover, played a major part in the painstaking investigation that led to the arrest, trial, and execution of the kidnapper. The Bureau was given federal jurisdiction. Using the thorough and scientific investigative methods which became their hallmark, they brought under control this threat to the safety of every American family, as they strive to do so today. From that time on, the FBI has continued its efforts for the safe return of kidnapped victims and the apprehension of the kidnappers. Another challenge to law enforcement in the 30s was a new breed of bank robbers and killers who terrorized the Middle West. These reenactments show how some of them met their end. John Dillinger. Babyface Nelson. Machine Gun Kelly, who coined the term G-Men. Pretty Boy Floyd. All killed or captured by FBI agents, some of whom died, meeting the outlaw challenge. The end of the 30s saw the rise of Hitler and the threat of war in Europe. The FBI was charged with keeping track of such groups as the German-American Bund and the rapidly growing espionage activities of our potential enemies. With Pearl Harbor and World War II, their mission was enlarged. The challenge became greater. This reenactment shows how war once actually came to our shores in the shape of Nazi saboteurs landed from a submarine on the coast of Long Island. But the FBI was there. These newsreels show how the evidence so carefully collected was presented to a military court. Director Hoover and associates testified. The military court found the spies guilty. Some were executed, some sentenced to long prison terms, some eventually deported. As the automobile produced a more mobile criminal in the 30s, the airplane produced a more ruthless one in the 50s. Their method was the cold-blooded destruction of an aircraft in flight so that the killer on the ground could collect insurance or dispose of an enemy. Suspicious crash wreckage was minutely examined by experts from the Civil Aviation Board and FBI. One such examination and its follow-up by the FBI led to the arrest, trial, conviction, and execution of John Gilbert Graham, who in blowing up the airplane was responsible for the death of 44 people, including his own mother, to collect her insurance. The 1960s brought another challenge of the air age, the skyjackers. Whatever their motivations, this was a challenge that had to be met, fast. The FBI joined with the Federal Aviation Administration and the airlines in a concerted effort that has greatly reduced this intolerable hazard to air travel. The 1960s also brought the FBI a new challenge, the civil rights struggle to secure for all citizens their constitutional guarantees. Violence and the threats of violence marked the early stages. FBI investigations, impartial and thorough, provided proofs necessary for federal prosecution of civil rights violations, up to and including murder. It seems fitting that we end this history of some challenges met by the FBI during the almost 50 years in which J. Edgar Hoover was its director, with presentation of the Freedom Foundation Award at Valley Forge. The challenges continue. Organized crime with its illicit billions trying to hide behind the cloak of respectability. An increase in extremist terrorism with heavily armed urban guerrillas drawn from varied ethnic and economic backgrounds. Police officers being killed by snipers in random ambushes. To meet the challenges of today and prepare for the challenges of tomorrow, your FBI remains in the forefront of both the training and technology for criminal investigation. This headquarters, as you will see on your tour, provides the most modern facilities from which to administer the nationwide FBI field offices. It also houses a better equipped and more spacious FBI laboratory, which includes such advanced forensic techniques as neutron activation analysis. Any law enforcement agency may send evidence for FBI laboratory examination. and call upon the FBI examiner to testify. Both of these services are without charge. Other facilities are also being updated. Some you will see on your tour. Others are located elsewhere. Fingerprint files, always an essential tool of criminal investigation, will soon be quickly classified as scanning system, a great improvement on visual search. The FBI's National Crime Information Center, with hundreds of terminals and law enforcement agencies throughout the country, provides instantaneous identification of stolen cars and other property, as well as wanted criminals. And finally, a university for law enforcement, the FBI Academy in Quantico, Virginia. The magnificent campus houses classrooms and laboratories equipped with the most advanced educational technology. The library provides extensive learning resources in books and audio-video equipment. The Academy firing ranges, with their close combat and other specialized training courses, reflect the realities of police work today. The Academy trains all new agents and brings experienced, seasoned agents at all levels back for refresher or specialized technical courses. The same facilities are used for the FBI National Academy, open to selected law enforcement officers from every U.S. agency and from many foreign countries. Successful completion of the National Academy course is recognized as a significant forward step in a law enforcement career, and graduates return to duty with a broader academic background and a heightened knowledge of technological advances in their chosen profession. It is only fitting that a recent graduating class presented to the FBI Academy this sculpture of J. Edgar Hoover, who conceived such a training program soon after taking office as FBI Director.
Ladies and gentlemen, I hope that this brief background on the FBI and how it has met its responsibilities over the years will add to the enjoyment of your tour. I do not want to leave with you the idea that there will be no more problems in the future, or that facilities and technology alone will solve them. As always, people solve problems. People meet challenges. The men and women of your FBI will continue to live up to their entrusted responsibilities in the spirit symbolized by our creed: fidelity, bravery, integrity. Enjoy the tour of your FBI.
Wow. Yeah. A lot to unpack there, but yeah, maybe look at the Wikipedia entry for the FBI and see they did do some good things and they did some really bad things, all under Herbert Hoover's watch. No, not Herbert Hoover. J. Edgar Hoover's watch. So there you go. Let's see. Oh, so we've got a film from my collection. So slowly we kind of go back and forth and try to scan some things when we have time between the paying gigs where we do digitizing for other folks to help pay the bills. So this is Insects. Enjoy.
Sometimes we think we are all alone. We look around and see nothing but trees and flowers. Let's look closely and listen. No, we are not alone. In fact, there are more kinds of insects than any other creatures in the world. And they live everywhere we do, and in many places we don't. Their numbers are so large that we can hardly imagine how many there are. What looks like a small cloud of dancing snowflakes is really thousands of insects. Why are there so many insects? The main reason is that so many are born. The offspring from a single pair of insects could blanket the whole world in a single summer. Could, but don't. There's not enough food, and there are too many enemies. Some of an insect's enemies are other insects. Then there are fish, reptiles, and birds. Even man with his fly swatters and chemicals. Insects are born by the millions so that their kind will survive. And there are hundreds of thousands of different kinds. Some are so small a leaf looks large by comparison. Others are big enough to cover a watch. Your own backyard is probably home to hundreds of kinds of insects. Insects come in all shapes, sizes, and colors, but they are all insects. They all have things in common with this fly. A head with the insect's brain, eyes, and mouth parts. The thorax. This is where the insect's wings and legs connect. The abdomen houses the body cavity. Inside are the insect's heart, stomach, and intestines. Insects have either 2 or 4 wings. This fly has 2. Insects also have 6 legs. The antennae are attached to the insect's head. They help it sense its world. Now you can tell an insect from any other animal you might meet. An insect's eyes are very different from our own. Each eye is made up of thousands of tiny lenses. We call this a compound eye. Each lens sends a picture to the brain. What the insect sees are all these pictures put together. Some insects find out about their world in strange ways. Some hear through their legs. Others taste through their feet. Often, insects are very hard to see. Many are able to blend in with the twigs, stems, even the flowers they live on. This helps them hide from enemies. Insects are good animals to study. You can find them almost everywhere. Look in trees, bushes, flowers, and on the ground. Often you can find them near water. Be careful not to hurt the insect when you catch it. Bring back some of the water or leaves the insect was in. Then it will have something to eat. Here, a moth emerges. Moths and their close relatives, butterflies, are some of the most beautiful insects. And like most insects, they can fly. In fact, insects were the first animals to master flight. One of the best ways to study an insect is to film it. One of the most interesting and beautiful insects is the monarch butterfly. The photographer is going to record the life cycle of the monarch. A life cycle is a series of stages. Each insect passes through these stages in becoming an adult. The life cycle begins when the female lays a tiny white egg. The process called complete metamorphosis has begun. The egg is about the same size as the eye of a needle. 5 days later, the larva, or caterpillar, emerges. This is the second stage. The larva is hungry. For several weeks, it will eat almost constantly. It grows quickly. When it is mature, the larva will be many times larger than it was at birth. Then, the larva slows down. Soon, it stops eating. The larva attaches a small button of silk to a branch. Speeded up, the larva changes into a pupa, or chrysalis. This is the third stage. Inside, the pupa is changing into an adult butterfly. You can see through the chrysalis just before the adult butterfly emerges. The miracle of metamorphosis is complete. The photographer has an idea. He collects larvae about to pupate and hangs them from a small tree. For more than a week, he watches the tree. Finally, the monarchs begin emerging. The sight is rare and beautiful. One of the best-known insects is the honeybee. Many bees live together in a hive. They come and go all day long. Activity in the hive centers on the queen bee. The queen is the largest bee in the hive. Worker bees groom and feed her. The queen's only job is to lay eggs. She lays eggs for the entire hive. The metamorphosis of the bee takes 21 days. On the average, the workers feed each larva almost once a minute, all day long. In 12 days, the pupa looks pretty much like an adult. Then, the young bee emerges. It chews through the beeswax covering of its cell. The new adult bees begin work at once. Worker bees form chains to repair honeycomb. Each bee works for the good of the hive. A worker bee lives only about 5 or 6 weeks. The queen bee may live 2 to 3 years. When she dies, the workers must produce a new queen. Special cells are built around a few eggs and larvae. The workers put royal jelly in the cells. Now, the special larvae change into queens. A hive can only have one queen. The first queen born hunts for other royal cells. If 2 queens are born at the same time, they fight. Only one can live. Except in winter, bees search for flowers. Here they sip nectar to turn into honey, and they gather pollen, the golden dust used to raise more bees. As the bee flies from flower to flower, it leaves some pollen behind. The pollen from the different flowers gets mixed up. This helps the flowers bloom, produce seed, and grow another year. Insects are easy to overlook, but they were here on Earth long before we were, and they are no less important.
Pretty rudimentary reptiles. So National Geographic, I guess they would do these bigger kind of specials that they would show on television, which I remember being very excited about. I think they would show on Sundays, and a lot of Jacques Cousteau stuff was there. But I'm sure they did one about the insect world, and then from that they edited it down. And then created films for distribution to schools because that educational film market was very lucrative. All right, what do we got here? Yeah, let's go ahead and watch this. This is another film from the National Archives that I downloaded, and it was an old Windows Media video file back in the day. So the compression is crazy. It was 320 by 240. So I ran it through some software to try to make it the resolution a little bit better, but we'll see. This is Second Revolution in Banking. What was the first revolution? Enjoy.
Six, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. This is an age of electronic miracles, but not all of them deal with the conquest of outer space. Equally dramatic and significant are the many electronic systems designed to accomplish faster and better than we ever thought possible many of the tasks that fill our daily lives. One example is a new way of handling bank bookkeeping, so advanced it is almost unbelievable. For many centuries, bank bookkeeping was no faster than the speed of a clerk performing all of the many necessary operations by hand. The first revolution in bank record keeping occurred about the time of World War I, when bookkeeping machines were introduced. Since that time, these machines have remained virtually unchanged. 40 years ago, bookkeeping machines ranked as a significant improvement. Today, they are as obsolete as quill pens. You see, the banking industry has been losing ground to a tremendous mountain of paperwork. The primary reason, of course, has been the increasing use of checks rather than cash in financial transactions. The number of checks being written this year is more than 4 times the total of only 15 years ago. What's more, the number of checks will double in the next 10 years. Obviously, new and improved methods must be adopted by America's banks to supplement existing bookkeeping machine operations. Merchandise National Bank is proud to be among the first in the nation to install an electronic computer, a General Electric 210 system that can actually read the same information you and I can read. This entirely new concept marks the second revolution in banking. Components in our system include the reader sorter, a high-speed printer, the magnetic tape units, the central processor, and the control console. So that our electronic marbles can go to work with incredible speed and infinite accuracy, we must prepare checks and deposit tickets for entry into the system. On each of our customers' checks and deposit tickets appears a line of symbols printed in magnetic ink. What is magnetic ink? It's regular printer's ink with tiny iron oxide particles added. And while magnetic ink looks and feels no different to us, it enables our computer system to read information faster and more accurately than any human. Each group of figures tells the computer something different. This group says that the check is drawn on Merchandise National. This group identifies the check as belonging to Sally Marshall. How do these numbers get on the check? When Sally Marshall or any other customer places an order for personalized checks, this automatic electric typewriter prepares a paper mat from a permanent punched card containing all of the necessary information on the customer's account. The mat is put on an offset printing press using magnetic ink, and off come the printed checks. To make sure that we've added just the right amount of iron oxide particles to the line of symbols on Sally's checks and deposit tickets, we test samples on this signal strength machine. The gauge assures us that the computer system will be able to read the information on Sally's checks and deposit tickets. Here's a check which Sally has written. The magnetic ink symbols make no difference to Sally. She writes checks just as she always has. This particular check, made payable to Jones Pharmacy, is for $10. When the check is presented to Merchandise National for payment, 2 more items of information will be added to the line of symbols. The amount of the check, $10, and a transaction code indicating to the computer that this item is a check to be charged against Sally's account. Now let's take a closer look at each of the components in our system to learn the functions they perform. This, you'll remember, is the reader sorter. All checks and deposit tickets enter the computer system here in the loading mechanism. There's no need to separate them in advance, for the reader sorter will read, sort, and interpret information on all types and sizes of items in the same run. Remember our saying that the computer could actually read information? This is where it's done. The magnetic ink characters on each check and deposit ticket are magnetized just before passing a reading head, which interprets impulses given off by the magnetized particles. What if there's an item the computer can't read? This happens infrequently, but when it does, the item lands in a reject pocket for special handling. Looks fast, doesn't it? It is. An average of 750 items per minute is passing through the machine, accomplishing sorting 13 times faster than can be done by hand. The computer system not only reads information, it records all of the vital details on magnetic tape. These ledgers of tomorrow record and store all of the information pertaining to all of the bank's checking accounts. The tape units operate in much the same way as a home tape recorder, but of course they're much faster. Information can be recorded on or read from the tape at the rate of 30,000 characters per second. In addition to high speed, the tape units save space. We can store the detailed records on all of the bank's commercial and special checking accounts on just one reel of tape. This replaces 17,000 separate ledger cards. Is the bank's operation dependent solely upon information stored on these tapes? The answer is no. For the high-speed printer prints records on paper for us to read in familiar words and numbers. Under direction of the computer, this machine prints all journals, reports, and other information needed by management, as well as the statements for customers. It prints 600 lines of words or 1,200 lines of numbers per minute. Looking over the console operator's shoulder, we see the central processor, the unit that performs all of the additions, multiplications, and other arithmetic necessary in deposit accounting. The operator's console itself is the nerve center of the whole system. Here are scores of flashing lights, buttons, controls, switches, and an automatic typewriter. The operator uses the button controls and switches to tell the computer what to do, and the operator learns from the lights and automatic typewriter what the computer is doing. Now let's follow a bookkeeping run of the system to see how the units join forces to provide customers with the world's fastest, most accurate deposit accounting. Sally Marshall's check is among the many items included in our first operation, the entry run. Her check, along with a number of other checks and deposit tickets, is placed in the loading mechanism of the reader sorter. The machine will read every magnetic ink symbol on Sally's check, verifying that the account number represents a valid account. The bank identification number will be checked to make certain the check is actually drawn on Merchandise National. After the check has been read and verified, the document itself is canceled and filed. But the information contained in the magnetic ink symbols continues to play an important role in the operation of our system. While the reader sorter was sorting documents, all of the important information in the magnetic ink line of Sally's check was being placed on magnetic tape for future use. What's more, the same data were printed out by the high-speed printer for immediate examination. Both the magnetic tape and high-speed printer contain information concerning Sally's check and all other documents in the same random order in which they were received by the reader sorter. Obviously, we'll need to rearrange this information by account number. A second run, the computer sort run, accomplishes this rearrangement at the same high speed maintained in the initial sorting and presents us with the information read from the checks and deposit tickets in numerical order. Now, we're ready to do our daily posting using the transaction tape, which lists checks and deposit tickets in account number order, and a master file tape. This master file contains complete data on each account. In the case of Sally Marshall, the master shows Sally's account number, her present balance, service charge information, all of the daily transactions posted to her account for the month, her name and address, and miscellaneous control information. Now, to do our posting, the computer will read an item of information by account number from the transaction tape, then locate that same account number on the master file tape. Let's say the item being read on the transaction tape is data on Sally Marshall's $10 check. The system will post Sally's account, the service charge information, miscellaneous information, and add this transaction to the record of previous transactions. Thus, after all of the day's transactions, Sally's and those of all other customers have been recorded. An up-to-date master file is created, which will be used in the next day's posting. After the computer posts each customer's account, the high-speed printer prepares for the bank's use a daily journal and trial balance, reflecting all of the information posted to the various accounts. This form allows us to read all of the information compiled on tape by the computer. A special tape is used to record exceptions which appear in the updating process. Included are overdrafts, closed accounts, and special statement requests. To complete daily deposit accounting, involving up to 30,000 transactions, will take 3 or 4 hours of computer time. Formerly, 60 man-hours were required for the same operation. Now let's take a look at how the computer system handles production of customer statements. Let's take Sally Marshall's statement as a case in point. First, the computer will call into action the master file record of Sally's account. The computer will take Sally's name and address from the tape, locate Sally's opening balance, and print that information on her new statement. Next, all of the detail involving Sally's account is printed, from earliest to most recent. The final bit of information to be recorded will be Sally's current balance. This is the familiar customer statement with even more detailed information than ever before. This, then, is the electronic age in banking, the reader sorter, which can sort checks 13 times faster than we were able to do by hand. The printer, which can write 86,400 characters a minute. The tape units, which can store on just one reel complete information on all accounts, replacing nearly 17,000 separate ledger cards formerly used. The central processor, where logical elements for controlling the system are stored. And the operator's console, nerve center of the entire system. Today, this magnetic ink computer system makes possible the world's fastest, most efficient banking service. Similar systems eventually will be employed by insurance companies, department stores, and utilities. In fact, wherever paperwork is a problem. But who knows? Perhaps sometime in the future, an even better method of handling paperwork may be found. Of this you can be sure. When it is, Progressive Merchandise National Bank of Chicago, ever alert to ways of serving customers better, will be among the first to adopt it.
What a great logo. Yeah, so Sally Marshall, there was a lot going on there just for that $10 check. So in 1961, I mentioned in the comments that there is a film I have called The Language They Speak. And it's essentially made for data processing companies to talk about how, because their computer rooms are so loud and the printers are so loud and the tape drives are so loud, that they could hire deaf people to work there. And I think Kevin pointed out, yeah, that doesn't mean that the deaf people still aren't getting their hearing damaged in other parts of what, but that was all like management coming up like, oh, well, we'll just hire deaf people. It'll be great. So that film was, I think, from the late 60s, early 70s. And it's pretty good. I mean, it was a Hire the Handicap film, which is great. But, it's management trying to figure stuff out. So in the course, I was looking on the National Archives site for films that dealt with computers, which is why we saw this last film. But this next film is great because it basically, I think it's a segment from Vision, which is the it's kind of like a news magazine, but it's part of the USIAA, so it's propaganda for U.S. propaganda. And this is just a segment about computer graphics, and specifically, they talk about an analog computer. And looking at it, that analog computer is the Scanimate. Although it could be, they never identify it as such, but the effects are very similar. So it's possible there might have been another system out there, but Scanimate, the intro to all the Inside Out episodes with the kind of weird spinning and the kind of deformed things, that was a Scanimate. Electric Company was completely, all the graphics on there were done with the Scanimate. And there were other commercials and things like that you would see. So this is a little short segment about the graphic analog computer. Enjoy.
And a new art form was born. The Olympic runner is the latest computer art to come from the Bell Laboratories' newest digital computer. Under the stimulus of artist and programmer, the analog computer develops an infinite range of visual forms in a relatively short time, going well beyond what a human artist could possibly accomplish. These forms are recorded on videotape and often combined with other forms, resulting in new and widely different ways of communicating visual information on the screen. Commercial and public television are using computer art in their programs and commercials, and all indications point to an increase in computer art in motion pictures and television. With the analog computer, work is photographed onto motion picture film. The editor and color consultant are then able to add and combine colors as freely as an artist with his oils and watercolors. Some of what the computer artist does is indistinguishable from magic. As he learns how to use the digital computer more fully, we will see combinations of color and motion beyond our present understanding of what is possible.
And then it just ends. I'm going to try to track that down because that is pretty cool. And it sounds like Bell Labs created it, like lots of technology that was popular in the 70s and 80s. And I think that, Bell Labs came up with it, and then it's possible that Scanimate licensed it, or they took notes looking at the patent and created their own systems. I don't know. But at one point in my life, somebody on one of these news groups that I was on was like, I have a Scanimate system and I just don't have room for it anymore. And my wife wants me to get rid of it because it takes up an entire room. And I was like, oh my gosh. I got very excited. I was like, oh man, that would be awesome. And I had a friend who does like tech stuff, and he's like, yeah, we can fix it and we'll get it up and running. It'll be great. And I began to kind of reach out to the guy to see if he was interested. I think he was in West Virginia. And then at some point in my head, I was like, wait a minute. I already got a thing. I'm already collecting 16 millimeter films and trying to collect equipment. And to be honest, a lot of these effects, if I really wanted to create them, I could do them in After Effects or come up with some way to do it with video switchers and stuff like that. So I was like, the idea of having a giant, like one room at my house dedicated to this visual analog computer, it just wouldn't work because it was already, I had rooms filled with equipment and with films and of course a bed where I could sleep and, food for the kitchen and a bathroom. And the guy never really got back to me, so I never really followed up. I think he was fishing for maybe a museum to purchase it and for him to kind of make some money, whereas I didn't really have the money to do it. So that's that story. Thank you for tuning in today, and thank you, Kevin, for the donation via the Super Thanks button. That is a great way to support us financially, so that if we have an opportunity to get another Scanimate, then maybe I'll look and see. And you guys can help me figure out a way what to do with it. No, I'm kidding. I really am not going to get a Scanimate. I would love to play with one, but I am not willing to bring one into my life because I have so much other equipment that I'm underutilizing related to film and video. So thank you again for tuning in, and we will be back again tomorrow, and we'll watch more films and we'll talk about stuff, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye. Thanks so much.